Hey all, so Into the Unknown, science fiction thriller anthology from Ambassador International was released on Tuesday, and this was my first published work in my short story called Safeship that's featured in the anthology. So it's been really exciting. I've got a few people reaching out and telling me their reactions to it, and I was really nervous to see people's reactions because honestly, this story is so much different than anything I've ever written, and yet it's my first published work. So it's kind of an instance where it might be sort of a false first impression, if that makes sense. But that being said, I'm actually, even though it's different than anything else I've ever written, it's the only sci-fi I've ever written. Well, I don't know if that's entirely true, but it's the only straight sci-fi that I've ever written. The Withering, my novel that's coming out soon from Ambassador International as well, it has sci-fi elements to it, but I'd call it more adventure or maybe fantasy. Anyway, the point is that it's kind of different than my usual. It's a little out of my norm, but it was really fun to write. It was the first story I've written where I just straight pantsed it all the way through. I didn't plot at all. I just kind of started writing and it just came out. Of course, I went back and revised things later to put the pieces in place. And I think it turned out really well. I'm pretty proud of it. So today what I wanted to do is just give you a little excerpt from it. I'm going to read the first chapter. So chapter 1 is called The Tightness. And here we go. Chapter 1, The Tightness. If a thief is caught breaking in at night and is struck a fatal blow, the defender is not guilty of bloodshed. Exodus 22:2. NIV. His lungs always gave out before his legs did. Ever since Bhirus was a kid, he'd suffered from the tightness in his lungs. It only really became a problem when he ran for too long. This wasn't the first time he had to push through his handicap for the sake of the job, but this was certainly the longest chase he'd ever endured. His eyes scanned the jilting horizon for the telltale signs of a safe ship, hoping to find one before his indignant bronchioles seized up completely. The baying of the netherhounds somewhere behind him spurred him onward through Reynolds' interstellar spaceport. He didn't even feel the skin rip away from his left shoulder as he barreled down a packed corridor, veering too close to the rusted and twisted wire fence. He emerged at the far end of the corridor, knowing full well that this next terminal would be his last chance. The terminal was too large and too open. The nearest exit might as well have been a distant planet. And he wouldn't get there alive without some albuterol to dilate his constricting airway. He spotted a posse of spaceport security dead ahead of him. They had seen him as well. Hands dropped in unison, releasing loose grips on black radios and unholstering fully charged hotshots with Ice Dancer's synchrony. Then he saw it, scrawled in the merciful hue of mercenary blue, across the hull of a Saber-class freighter. The secret runes known only to Upper Thieves. It was a safe ship. Bhirus would be happy to surrender a quarter of his score of the job at that point. He would have given them half if they demanded it, but he knew they wouldn't do that. Upper Thieves lived and died by the code. To his right, he caught a flash of yellow. He hoped it wasn't what he thought it was. He turned and saw the thing he feared. 3 clerics, Gamma patrols, were bearing down on him quickly. He was sure he could beat them to the ramp, but he'd have to book it if they were going to lift the ramp and take off before the clerics caught up. Somewhere behind him, the baying of the netherhounds grew closer. The captain stood vigilant at the bottom of the ramp, ready to beat feet if the right opportunity came along. Bhirus was close, but the world was growing increasingly unstable around him. Swirling and spinning, blinking and bobbing. Was he even running towards the ship? Or was it getting further from him? With the Safeship just out of grasp, a ruthless desperation snuck in, a solid punch to the gut, and he was suddenly sure that he'd never make it. If the Netherhounds didn't catch him and crush his windpipe with their reaping jaws, then the tightness would, and the tightness wasn't called off so easily. The captain of the Safeship turned in Bhirus's direction and met his gaze. Bhirus's thoughts landed on his own uniform. He was disguised as a Marish house guard, as the job had called for. Any good Safeship captain should be able to recognize this situation and see past the disguise, but it still made him nervous. He'd never had to don a disguise for a job before, and he'd certainly never botched a job so badly that his life depended on a Safeship. To his relief, the captain nodded, and an unspoken agreement had been made. Simple as that. She disappeared up the ramp, and a moment later the engines roared to life, blending into the ubiquitous hum of the spaceport terminal. The Netherhounds behind him grew louder, and the ship before him grew darker. His legs threatened to fold up, and he was no longer breathing at all. He forced his eyes open and saw the ramp just a few steps ahead of him. His eyelids forced themselves shut again as he took the final few steps in darkness. So there's chapter 1 of Safeship. It's a fun story. It's an adventure. It's kind of a thriller. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. It's you can go to pspatton.com and find all the links to where you can actually purchase it. It's $2.99 for the whole anthology, and that includes not only Safeship, but 6 other really awesome sci-fi thrillers by authors from Ambassador International as well. So I'm really proud to be a part of this anthology. I really like all the other stories as well. Fun fact, they are all in a shared universe. So we all kind of work together on how the justice system works in this universe. And so like the Gamma clerics that were wearing yellow robes, for instance, you're going to see those same sort of details throughout all 7 of the stories. So we definitely had kind of threads running through all the stories, and they're all unique stories. They have nothing to do with one another, but they are all in the same universe, and so that's why they all belong in the same anthology together. So it was a really fun project to work on, and I'm excited for you guys to read it. Please reach out to me and let me know what you think about it, whether it's comments or a review on Goodreads or Amazon or wherever. That would mean a lot. Just as my first published work, it's the first time I'm going to get like more feedback than just my editors or family. So I'm really curious to know what you guys think of it and how it's received. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, and good night.